First question that popped to mind that I got over the weekend was just talking about interest rates, house prices. What are we sort of seeing? Where are things going? What can we expect this year? Anyone got a view on that? Jack, yeah.
James, I want talking about this one because I was still during the pandemic. I was talking with the few people, which my client and all the people back to that time. They said, the housing price gonna drop 30%, 40%. Someone would even tell me, have you reading the newspaper? Have you reading, like you said, the fake news? Have you reading someone saying like that the housing price will drop 50%?
I remember that well. I think at that time Greg was on the medication and worrying about what was going on. So yeah, it was a very interesting article. Yeah.
Yeah. So but today I wanna say just simply use your cube technique the way, and the RBA, the Australian Reserve Bank, has predicted the property price in Australia will jump 30% in 3 years. That's very simple.
Wow.
30% in 3 years. That's from RBA.
And why is that? Like what why are they saying that?
Because the reason behind is the confidence from the low interest rate, which could be, at least in the next 3 years, which is confirmed by the government. It's not we saying it's RBA. They confirm the lower interest rates will continue in the next 3 years. It's not like a temporarily. It's kind of like the permanent.
Yeah. Okay. So the Reserve Bank in my mind is the ultimate number cruncher in our economy. So if they're sort of all about numbers and facts and figures and data, us in the industry, we sort of run on a bit of a gut feeling and our experience and so forth. What are they sort of, do they have a formula or how are they coming up with this 30%?
Yes. So basically, the Reserve Bank, they had analyzed and they said, and the 1% cut on the cash rate will translate into 10% increase in housing price, because they confirm in the next 3 years, the interest rate will keep in lower. So which means they every year got a 10% increase in housing price. So at least 3 years, which means at least a 30% increase on property price. So that's the way they will say, okay, in the next 3 years, the Australian property price will increase 30%, which is very similar. It's translate from the formula from the RBA.
Okay. And so what are we sort of, what can people expect? What's an interest rate they might be paying on a home loan now if they're an owner-occupier?
On the 2%, I think.
Under 2%, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
wow.
Under 2%, yeah. It's a very, very, very good interest rate.
Yeah. All right, so a little bit like your commission, 2%. All right, I've got a question here from Raymond talking about population growth and, it's predicted to be significantly down this year. And he sort of said, is there any positive with that, or is it all doom and gloom in terms of demand?
I'll jump in here if you don't mind, James.
Sure.
Look, yes, there were some figures released regarding the population growth, and the expected population growth for this year is actually going to be the lowest that we had in the last century, of just 0.2%. And the predicted population growth for next year is just 0.4%. Now, what this means is that the working age population is likely to shrink as fewer skilled migrants enter the country. So to put it plainly, slow population growth also means lower number of jobs needed than usual to keep the unemployment rate steady. So with just about 7,000 jobs now, we can get the job done and keep the unemployment steady due to that growth.
Okay. So what's the unemployment rate now?
It's just under 6%.
Okay. So what you're effectively saying, typically, we know that population growth, I guess primarily from migration, where, they're not babies per se migrating, they're people that are looking for homes and places to live, might be, giving slightly less demand for housing. But you're saying on the flip side, now, the employment, which also helps to drive the demand and people feeling confident, we're now needing only a fraction of the monthly jobs to get unemployment under check.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, look, that's a really, really interesting point. Raymond, hopefully hopefully you are employed, and I hope everyone on the call today has got a job. If you're not, that's a really, really interesting, positive way to look at it, that with less skilled migrants, there's going to be less competition for jobs, and therefore less jobs the economy needs to produce to get going. So, there's some sort of interesting points. Being, I guess, always cautious of what various people are saying. These, Jack sort of talked about interest rates. We've talked about population growth on the one hand, having less demand for housing, but actually a positive for employment. Is there, can one of you guys pull all this together in terms of, what does that mean for our economy? What can we sort of look at rather than just those two factors in isolation?
James, when you actually look at, some people have said, is the RBA out of control? Well, certainly not. I think he's being very sensible in what he's doing. He's doing a very big balancing act. On the one side, by allowing property prices and stuff to increase, we're seeing confidence getting back into the market. We see people they see their wealth increasing, they start spending. That in turn people start spending. They start opening up their wallets as such. And then people would say, well, isn't that irresponsible? Well, no, because he's looking exactly what Lucas has indicated, that what keeps us in check, so it doesn't get astronomically out of control, will be population growth has decreased substantially. So you're getting people getting, spending money, property prices increasing. Then we got a lower population growth, and at this stage we still haven't reached the employment levels pre-COVID. So that still needs to reach those sort of sub sixes, whatever it is, percent, to get it back where it might need rectification. But right now, those two factors will keep things screaming out of control. So he really seems to, I'm not an economist, but from what I can see, that's what he's doing. He's trying to keep things, it's a balancing act.
Got it.
Yeah.
So basically we're sort of saying, increases in house prices leads to increased confidence. That leads to increased spending in the economy.
Yes.
Leads to more jobs need to be created. Leads to lower unemployment.
Yes.
And then leads to people being confident to buy a house.
Yes.
New housing, construction, and it keeps going round and round, that sort of cycle.
So yes, we'll still see good increases. So definitely no gloom and doom. I'm off the drugs. So that's very, very good. So it's not all gloom and doom. It's still a steady and sustainable increase, which is good for everybody. But at the same time, he's really, looking at the bigger picture, he's doing a very good balancing act in keeping things running properly.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's a good sort of thought there. So if anyone on the call's got any other sort of thoughts they want to put in or further questions on that point, let me know. I think we've covered most of your questions over on that. As another question I saw earlier from Amy, I'm just trying to scroll back to find it, but generally I think it was sort of talking about, apartments not being suitable for, somewhere she'd like to live, or, them being too small and so forth. And what do we think about that and how the future of living might be? Has anyone got any thoughts on that? And hopefully, Amy, if I've got your question wrong, let me know. But I think that was the gist of what she was getting at.
For the apartment, because we've been building apartment, lots of the city apartments, so we know the apartment the best, and also we know how the people talking about apartment. Exactly like you said, James. Some people say, apartment is too small. I don't have enough storage. I don't have the privacy, and living in a big building, I have too many neighbors. And but the thing is, when the people they inquire the apartment, I'm always asking, are you the investment or you own or occupy? And if they said I'm investment, I'm looking at investment property. As the first things I tell them, you invest the property is not the property where you live in. So the first thing is like you need to think about your investment property, who gonna live in there. So think about your property as a business. You're gonna say, my tenant is kind of my customer. What I'm gonna give to my customer, my tenant, and who is gonna love this one? And you're sort of thinking, for example, like thinking like this area, we got all the young professional living here. What is this need? They need the location, they need the public transport, or so basically any of the property they can't satisfy all your requirement. Like I want an apartment, but I want a big wardrobe. I want everything's fancy. That's not gonna happen. And but think about it, if you invest the property and just trading your investment as a business, thinking this is what I'm gonna offer to my client, my customer.
Because, like you said, taking the emotion out of it, looking at it sensibly in terms of a business, taking the emotion completely away from it.
Yeah. So, I guess it's that age-old saying, know your customer. And if your customer is you and you're going to live in it, then great. Listen to what you're saying. If not, think about what your customer wants rather than that. I mean, I know, I think all of us on here are relatively well off, and perhaps where we live may be very different to the types of investment properties that we would buy. So, if that's the case, what, know your customer, what are the sort of customers that are typically living in apartments then? If you guys have got people that are saying, oh, it's too small, no, I don't like this. What Amy was talking about, saying that she doesn't think apartments are designed for today. Who actually are the apartment dwellers? Like what have they got to say?
Basically, the people they live in the apartment, for example, we say the Sydney and the Melbourne, we can have them like a few different group. The biggest group must be the young professional, which means they got the good job and they're working in either the good company, they have the not bad income, and they are still young. This could be the first the property. And the second of all is some of the aging people, they trying to downsize, maybe after 60 years old, and they can't live in a house, and they trying to live in an apartment using a different lifestyle. And then we sort of thinking like migrant, like the people, the migrant here, they live in the apartment. Could be like they used to live in the same style when they were overseas. And also maybe some still young people, they haven't got employment, then they're looking for the job. And that's pretty much all the group of people living in the apartments in Melbourne, Sydney. Yeah.
So who's the biggest group out of that?
I think the biggest group will be the young professional, like more than half.
Yeah. So typically we're talking about young professionals, no kids, either a couple of friends or maybe a young couple.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, because we knew that currently living in an apartment for the young people, young professional is kind of like the trade. And they love the location, they love everything, it's just next door. And it's very convenient for the work and for the social. And, it's kind of the trend. Like more and more people, they love this style to be living in apartments.
Yeah. So, if we flick across, I know Lucas loves to, spend the evening in a bath. His wife loves running it for him and he sits back and relaxes all the time. even though he tells me Greeks hate baths and don't typically do it, he might be looking for a place with a bath. Whereas really, I guess what we're saying is that, if that's the biggest target market of customers, that are looking for somewhere where, they're potentially, as you said, out at night, eating out, enjoying time with friends and so forth, is going to be a very different type of space they're looking for compared to, say, Lucas, for example. Yeah, okay. So have any of you guys had a recent experience with someone who perhaps has thought they want, the Taj Mahal, and then you've sort of run through it with them and explained to them that perhaps that's not what they want?
Yeah, actually, I've been dealing with it with a person that turns out to be an investor. When he was first talking to us, you're not quite sure. You ask them and they're not really sure themselves. But when you get down to it, ultimately, you've got to go to them and you say, if you're going to be an investor, just buy the best possible option at the best price for what your market will be. And then it cuts through all this stuff. Instead of trying to think what you want, buy something. It's an investment. Buy something that your clientele wants. And that's what this group expertise, this is what we know. So we advise them accordingly. And that's what he bought.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're getting close to time. So there was a question here from Belinda, which was asking, what is median prices? Now, I think here, Belinda, obviously jump in if I've got this wrong on the Q&A. I think she's meaning, sort of a definition in there. Has anyone sort of got a Cliff Notes version of what it means?
So the median price is based on the transactions that have occurred. What is the median price based on those transactions alone? So, and then that gives us basically the middle of that gives us the median price.
Okay, so it's not the average; it's actually the middle of those transactions.
Correct.
So that's where you have the outlier. For example, Greg sells his acreage for $10 million, and someone sells a tiny studio for $200,000. It's not necessarily getting that average; it's looking for that middle transaction.
Correct.
All right, Belinda. Hopefully that answers that. With that in mind, I've got a question. What are we seeing, around the country? Obviously, median prices are going to be quite different. Can you sort of give me a couple of,
Sure.
different areas that are showing a big difference?
Of course. Look, if you look in Sydney, for an example, you're looking for a medium one-bedroom apartment, median price being around the $800,000. If you're looking for Melbourne, somewhere like Essendon, a newish two-bedroom apartment with all bells and whistles around about the $680,000.
What about, say, Northern Territory?
Well, I'll tell you Brisbane instead, because I don't have the figures for Northern Territory in front of me right now. So you got me. But Brisbane, for an example, the medium apartment price is about $525,000.
Okay. So obviously Sydney is significantly higher there in terms of that.
Yes.
And I'm guessing, somewhere like Northern Territory is probably, $300,000-$400,000.
You probably buy a four-bedroom house for $580,000 there.
You'll probably buy Greg's acreage in there. All right. Look, I'm just conscious of time. So I want to just wrap up with a few closing comments. Everyone on the call, if I've missed any of your questions or you've got some follow-on questions, type them in. Even if you've done it before, just quickly type them in again, and I'll read those quickly through, and we'll hang around after. Those of you that have got to go, I'll quickly wrap up with a few